And we're recording. Hello, everyone. How's it going, Martin? How are you today?
Well, I was very amused by that story I told you before we started the podcast.
Oh, yeah. So, where did you say you found this? You said this was written by a former slave?
Oh, yeah. So when I do my lessons for teaching, I get real deep into it, right? I'm not the type of teacher that just makes up a worksheet, tells them what to do, or I'm not the type of teacher that takes something from the internet and just post it as a worksheet in my Google Classroom. I actually get deep with it and I try to learn as well. So one thing I came about when because this week I'm going to teach my students about the transatlantic slave trade. And so I was doing research on slavery, specifically the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
And I came across the New York Times Magazine 1619 project. This article from August 19th, 2019 by Nikita Stewart. And it actually quotes, the title of the article quotes one of my professors, Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries, the legend, as I like to call him.
The legend.
But anyway, the article, it has the story of an enslaved man, and this enslaved man tells a story about when he was a slave down in was it Texas? Yeah, I think Texas. Anyway, he has a story where his master bought a monkey and allowed the monkey to roam the plantation. And this monkey is roaming the plantation and just fucking with the slaves.
What is a fucking, did they even say if it's like a fucking chimp or something? Or is it
just a monkey?
Just a monkey, huh?
Like this monkey's walking around in a white tablecloth, scaring some enslaved dudes because they think he's a ghost. And this monkey's like copying them and, and just making fun of them. And I'm like, what is this? And finally, one enslaved man, he actually picks up a razor and starts shaving in front of the monkey. Cause monkey see, monkey do. Mm-hmm. And this monkey picked up the razor and the monkey cut his own throat and killed itself.
Exactly what the man wanted. My great grandfather said.
The enslaved man wanted by showing the monkey how to shave, and the monkey. But this story is just so random. But it's part of the. And by the way, like, where the hell did this story come from? This story was part of the Federal Writers Projects of Slave Narratives. So during the Great Depression, the United States government basically gave jobs to people. And one of the jobs they gave to struggling writers is they hired writers to basically do interviews from formerly enslaved peoples because the generation of slaves was dying out. Much like today, the World War II generation is dying out. So the federal government's like, man, we got to get these stories down of their experiences as a slave. And one of the stories was this monkey.
Wow. Okay.
I'm like, that made me laugh, that story.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to see an animal kill itself, but like, imagine a monkey walking around in a white tablecloth, just boom, scaring people. Like, what the
How would you even get a tablecloth on a monkey? That's what I don't understand.
Somebody probably put it on the monkey, man.
But wouldn't the monkey just take it off or something? It's a monkey.
Maybe no monkey see, monkey do. Maybe one of the master's children basically taught the monkey how to do this, and the monkey's just fucking with the slaves when they're trying to work. I'm like, man, this is messed up, man. Like, I gotta be a slave for you, this dumb white dude. Now I gotta worry about this monkey over here. What the hell?
I did Google monkey see, monkey do, and I'm on the Wikipedia page for it. And there's like a picture of a man holding a baby macaque. And he's like the guy is sticking out his tongue in one panel, and in the second panel, the baby macaque sticks his own little tongue out.
Oh man, they're so cute, those little monkeys.
Monkeys are cute. I just wish that the monkey rebelled against the slave master and
well, you know what? Speaking of that, guess whose birthday is October 2nd?
Whose?
Guess whose birthday? It is the birthday of Nat Turner.
Really?
October 2nd, 1800. Yeah, I share a birthday with this man, Nat Turner.
Oh, wow.
You know, Nat Turner, the one who led one of the most infamous slave rebellions in United States history.
Well, you lucky bastard.
Yeah, man. Which I'm kind of torn though, because you know, for my birthday, I kind of want to give everybody at, you know, where I work, school, at my job, teacher. I want to give my colleagues some cake, but I'm kind of torn because if I make a cake in honor of Nat Turner, I'm making a cake in honor of somebody who killed people. Is that okay? I don't know.
Well, let's ask who he killed.
Okay.
Like, if you let's frame it this way. Let's say you make a cake for a veteran of World War II. They stormed the beaches of Normandy and they fought the Nazis, and they killed this guy killed 7 Nazis. Like
the Nazis.
See? And who did Nat Turner kill?
Well, I think he killed some innocent white girls, man. I'm I don't know, man.
I don't like that. But
yeah, I mean, innocent people like that. I don't know, man.
Well, I won't comment on that, but I will say, if he killed some slave owners, I mean, that's very understandable. We here at Ministrymodus support slave revolts, by the way.
Well, according to Francis Simpkins and Charles Rowland's A History of the South, the rebellion did not discriminate by age or sex, and members killed white men, women, and children. Oh.
Oof.
So I'm I don't know. Maybe not, because, man, come on.
Mixed feelings.
Man.
Mixed feelings.
Yeah. But Nat Turner was a complicated dude, though. You know, he was a preacher too. He read his Bible. He was dubbed the prophet. But he's a very religious dude who saw visions.
Didn't they also after the rebellion? Didn't they pass the anti-literacy laws?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'm looking it up right now. Anti-literacy laws in many slave states before and during the Civil War affected slaves, free men, and in some cases, all people of color. Let's see here. Anti-literacy laws arose from fears of slave insurrection, particularly around the time of abolitionist David Walker's 1829 publication of Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World, which openly advocated rebellion, and Nat Turner's slave rebellion of 1831. It's a little thing down here. The United States is the only country known to have had anti-literacy laws.
Well, the U.S., one American value is anti-intellectualism.
Fuck books.
We stupid here in the United States of America.
But in all seriousness, we know why they passed those fucking laws.
Oh, yeah. So, but speaking of things that are kind of weird, I was going back and listening to our Conservapedia our Conservapedia episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not. I have verbal diarrhea. All right. I got verbal diarrhea. Sometimes I say shit, and sometimes I don't mean it literally. And I did not literally mean put those conservative people who believe in the Biden junta, put those people in camps. Some things I may say are for exaggeration and comedic purposes.
Now people are going to think what if he's just saying that and actually still believes that? Are you going to send Bob from our previous episodes to a camp?
Yes, I'm going to send him to a camp to learn how to not treat your gun like your penis.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes. Everybody out there, don't keep stroking and cocking it's not your penis. Don't touch your gun until you need it, or if you're just practicing it like a shooting range, you know? They're not toys. They're not dildos. Public service message, guns are not dildos. Although I know a lot of gun nuts in Texas may use them like that. But no, it's not.
It's not. It's really not. We here at Ministrymodus advocate responsible gun ownership.
And speaking of shitting on Texas, you heard that story
about
the Haitian immigrants? I mean,
oh yeah. See, in my brain, I keep using the word immigrants, but they're actually refugees, which obviously
refugees, yeah,
big difference. Even though media tends to lump them all in together, you know. I honestly hate the term migrant. Fucking hate that term. It's very misleading, and it just makes them seem like a wandering band of bodies rather than people.
Yeah. Yeah, like a herd of buffalo. There's a herd over there.
Yeah. Like herds of buffalo migrate.
Yeah. And can I just say, I think both you and I are for open borders.
Basically.
Yeah.
Fuck borders.
And people say, well, you should let everybody in. How about we devote a lot of money that we spend on the military? How about we devote that to immigration officials for immigration, so we can let people in this country at a, I guess, level pace. But and we can make these detention camps that they put these migrants into. We can make these detention camps like 5-star hotels. Shit, these people won't want to leave the fucking border. They'll be like, hey, what? Hey, I'm not leaving.
This border is actually nice.
Hell yeah.
There's a water slide. There's refreshments downstairs. I got complimentary breakfast. Shit.
But the amount of stuff that we spend on in this country, the useless shit, man, and the amount of tax breaks that the very wealthy at the top get. Come on, man. We can use that for stuff like humane stuff, like this stuff we're going to be talking about.
Gotta get that capital gains tax up.
Oh, wait, before the that current event, you want to go back to Bukulele Bukaki?
Do I really want to?
Just briefly, if you don't know who we're talking about, we're talking about the leader of El Salvador, Wahib.
Nayib.
No, Nayib.
Yeah.
Okay. Nayib Bukele. But I called them in our last episode Bukulele Bukaki because I want to insult this man personally.
He's not worthy of any respect. We do not put respect on this man's name.
Yes.
We put disrespect on his name. So, yeah.
You shared me something where on Twitter and you also posted it on our Twitter, this story where this Bulele Bukaki guy, he posted dictator. He said he was a dictator on Twitter.
So he changed, and there's articles written about this, but I'm looking at his Twitter account right now, and he changed the profile description under his name to be El Dictador Más Cool del Mundo Mundial, which basically is him being the coolest dictator in the world.
And I just want to say this too: if you want to call yourself a dictator, you need some bodies, all right? And I ain't talking about people that get screwed. I'm talking literal dead bodies, right? If you want to call yourself a dictator, go all the way with it. You know what I'm saying? Be committed. Kill as many people as Stalin and Pol Pot, all right? You want to call yourself a dictator, but you ain't no goddamn dictator.
I don't think you should be giving this man any ideas.
Just saying, if you're going to call yourself something, do it. Don't be a bitch. I'm just saying. Once again, everybody,
Don't be
serious.
Here we go. We got fucking Martin officially saying, yo, don't be a bitch. Kill people if you want to be a dictator.
Verbal diarrhea, all right?
Extreme verbal diarrhea.
Some things may be exaggerated for comedic purposes. But
Holy
shit, like...
Damn, sometimes I think I say some shit that I regret, and then I listen to you talk, and I feel so much better.
Diarrhea, okay? My breath smells like shit, okay? It got verbal diarrhea.
Nah, your breath smells nice. You brush like 3 times a day.
I do. And I also chew Trident gum. And to be serious, because, I was just playing before, but to be serious, hey, Trident gum, man, it's been recommended by dentists, chewing on it for 20 minutes.
20 minutes, folks.
Yeah, after you eat, 20 minutes.
Okay, I think that's enough of...
That's enough for bukkake.
Yeah. As we put more disrespect on his name.
Yeah.
We
sound right, dude.
There is a need to talk about something very serious that is ongoing at our nation's borders, which unfortunately exist. And that crisis is dealing with the Haitian refugees who are trying to find sanctuary in the United States. Which, on a moral level, we should obviously let them fucking in. Haiti has, for over a century, been at the mercy of both France and the United States. If I remember right, Haiti was actually forced to pay France reparations for the Haitian Revolution.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Let me Google that.
So Haiti was one of the first countries to successfully revolt against slavery. And it was a product of the Enlightenment. I teach that to my students when we talk about the Enlightenment. We talk about the Haitian Revolution, when the enslaved peoples actually took over,
Yeah, so a little Haitian history. So in 1825, following the Haitian Revolution, which Haiti, basically it was a slave revolt that overthrew the French authorities and allowed Haiti to essentially declare the first Black republic on Earth, essentially. But following that was what's called the Haiti Indemnity Controversy. So in 1825, an agreement was signed between Haiti and France that included France demanding a 150 million franc indemnity to be paid by Haiti in claims over property, including Haitian slaves that were lost through the Haitian Revolution in return for diplomatic recognition. The payment was later reduced to 90 million francs in 1838, which, if you compare that to the US dollar of 2004, equals an equivalent to $21 billion.
Oh.
Yeah. So France's demands of payment in exchange for recognizing Haiti's independence was delivered to the country by several French warships in 1825, 21 years after Haiti's declaration of independence in 1804. Though France received its last indemnity payment in 1893, the government of the United States funded the acquisition of Haiti's treasury in 1911 in order to receive interest payments related to the indemnity. And took...
Oh.
Yeah. So this is where the United States starts to step in and sees a fucking opportunity. It took until 1947, about 122 years later, for Haiti to finally pay off all the interest to the National City Bank of New York, which is now Citibank. Ain't that some fucking shit?
I would say, but I'm not. I'm not surprised, but like I'm still aghast. So,
Oh yeah. So
people wonder why a lot of these countries around the world are in bad economic situations. Man, history has an effect.
oh yeah. This isn't even like we could do an entire episode about this shit.
We need multiple episodes to do the history of this, especially when you bring in the fact that the World Bank, the effect that the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has on these countries.
And that's not the only thing either. So, Martin, are you familiar with a bunch of conflicts called the Banana Wars?
Oh yeah, didn't the first one I think occur shortly after World War One, when the United States, of course, invaded a country to get their produce? I don't.
Yeah, so I'll pull up the Banana Wars right here, and I will also link it to for your reference here.
And of course, Guatemala too.
Yeah, but Haiti was also a victim in this.
Oh, okay.
So these conflicts erupted kind of between the end of the Spanish-American War in 1898 and the introduction of the Good Neighbor policy in 1934. So it's a series of military interventions primarily carried out by the United States Marine Corps, who also developed a manual called the Small Wars Manual based on their experiences in this whole series of conflicts. But yeah, one of these important events that kind of ties Haiti with the United States sphere of influence was the United States occupation of Haiti, which occurred between, let me see here. Began on July 28, 1915, when 330 United States Marines landed at Port-au-Prince, Haiti, on the authority of President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, to establish control of Haiti's political, and here's the key word, financial interests. The invasion and subsequent occupation was promoted by growing American business interests in Haiti. The July intervention took place following years of socioeconomic instability within Haiti that culminated with the murder of the president of Haiti, Vilbrun Guillaume Sam, by insurgents angered by his ordered executions of elite opposition. The occupation ended on August 1st, 1934, after President Franklin Delano Roosevelt reaffirmed on August 1993 in a disengagement agreement. The last contingent of Marines departed on August 15, 1934, after a formal transfer of authority to the American-created Gendarmerie of Haiti. So, yeah, you can kind of imagine what the United States was very much interested in. I mean, we literally just said that. They wanted to exert control over Haiti's political and financial sectors.
Well, I mean, you look at South America, Central America, you look at Central America and South America, there is not one country where the United States hasn't put their fingers into, so to speak, got involved, sent troops into. At least I can't think of one.
Yeah. And because of the business interests, I mean, there's a strategic interest as well, because there was the threat of a German presence in Haiti because of World War One. However, the imperialist interest is, you could see why American businesses would want to open up in Haiti to basically enter the Haitian markets. Where do you think that money is going to go to when it starts flowing? It's going to go to U.S. business owners.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to basically take over the country. I mean, they own the money, they own the wealth, therefore they own the country.
Yeah, and they basically did. So you can imagine how, like, such a long-term effect, both this occupation and, of course, the debt payment the reparations Haiti was forced to pay to France, with a little skimmed off to the United States as well.
And what kind of grift is that, right? Like, we become independent from you and you still have us pay you?
Yeah.
It's like a prostitute paying for, what is that like? I don't know.
And not only that, the United States during the occupation introduced fucking Jim Crow laws to Haiti. Of course, with racist attitudes towards Haitian people by the American occupation forces that were blatant and widespread. Many of the Marines chosen to occupy Haiti were from the southern United States, specifically Alabama and Louisiana, resulting in increased racial tensions. Racism has been recognized as a factor, leading to increased violence by American troops against Haitians. One general described Haitians, I'm not going to read that, because it's a racial slur.
It's so bad you're not going to read it?
It's a racial slur. I'm not going to say that shit.
Oh, is it the N-word?
Yeah, it's the fucking N-word.
Okay. Well, you could have said the N-word, you know?
I don't want to say it, though. So, yeah, pretty fucking bad. That doesn't even cover all the forced labors. There was you're familiar with corvée labor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A corvée policy of forced labor was enacted upon Haitians, enforced by the U.S.-operated Haitian Gendarmerie in the interest of improving economic conditions to fulfill foreign debts, including payments to the United States, and to improve the nation's infrastructure.
Is the United States like the mafia here, just going into a country and saying, you pay us so we don't blow up your country?
The fucking U.S. was the devil in this shit.
You know...
So... Yeah, there's all that, and that doesn't even... We haven't even talked about, like, the recent shit in Haiti. Like, not only, like, is it experiencing increased instability with the assassination of their last president, but there's also the issue, the fact that, what was it, in, like, 1 or 2 weeks apart from each other, Haiti suffered an earthquake, like a, 7...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a 7.2, I think, level earthquake, and then followed barely a week later by a fucking hurricane.
Jimmy, Christmas, good. I would say when it rains, it pours, but, like, that's not even an apt metaphor for that.
Shit, like, Haiti has fucking experienced, like, the apocalypse for, like, over a century.
And a question that I ask, too, is, like, did the U.S. play a role in the assassination of that president?
Shit, who fucking knows?
I mean, like, this immigration issue is, to the United States, people, those who argue against immigration and those who argue for borders, for put up the wall, they're ignorant of all of these conflicts that the U.S. has either started or got involved in. They're ignorant of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's or they just don't fucking care.
Well, yeah. Like, fuck them, they ain't us.
Or they'll also say some shit like, well, that was over 100 years ago. Why does that matter now? That bullshit.
If your country had to pay, what are they called? Indemnity payments, whatever you call them. If they had to pay that for 100 years, that's going to hurt your economy.
Imagine, like, your whole country being enslaved by France. You overthrow them in an armed revolt, and then they demand payment for basically liberating yourselves. Like, that's fucking disgusting. And not only that,
good word.
You get the United States coming in, smelling a fucking opportunity, ready to do some imperializing. But yeah, kind of shifting the gears to more recent stuff. Yeah, let's read a few of these articles about what's going on at the borders. So,
which one do you want to start with? You gave me 3.
Yeah, I've pulled up 3. So there's one from The Guardian, another one from USA Today, and another from Slate. And they all deal with what's going on with the Haitian refugees. So how about we start with The Guardian here?
All right. Inhumanity. So this is... Yeah, so this is the article for The Guardian that we're referring to is called Inhumanity on the Border Forces NBA Players to Question if the U.S. has changed. Well, come to my classroom, NBA players, and I'll teach you the real shit. And it's by it's by a guy named Eaton Thomas. If I pronounce that gentleman's first name wrong.
Yeah,
I apologize.
I think it's Eaton Thomas.
Okay.
But yeah, do you want to start doing some reading?
Oh, yeah. So basketball. So the headline for this, I think it's a headline. Basketball players were among those who campaigned to remove Donald Trump from office, but clear injustices in America still remain. Absolutely, because as we both know, and as we want to teach you out there, it doesn't really matter who's in office as much as they're two sides of the same coin, Republican or Democrat. Although I would much not prefer to have our country represented by a buffoon like Orange's Anus Face, which I call Donald Trump, Orange's Anus Face. I'm sticking with that. But anyway, and what I mean by two sides of the same coin is that they both support the same economic system that is responsible for many of this injustice. So, and we just told you, gave you an example all the way back in 1914, 1915 with Haiti. All right. So let's start this off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get it like a flow mo. So starting right now, quote, "We want fair treatment for Haitian refugees." Unquote. These are the words of NBA Hall of Famer Dikembe Mutombo. And he used when I asked him about the Haitian refugees being brutalized and subject to mass deportations at the U.S.-Mexico border. So it's a statement you shouldn't need any more explanation in a country that once said, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." So, unfortunately, though, for Haitians, those words don't appear to apply to them. Refugees from the Caribbean nation have been forced from their country by a combination of devastating natural disasters, poverty, and political instability. Whoa. Yeah. And so America's welcome has included deporting thousands of the refugees to Haiti, a country some have never been to. Well, pause. That's interesting. But I'm clicking on those links, man.
Yeah. So that's a confusing.
Yeah. So let's see here. Oh man, I gotta register to keep reading.
Oh, I think it might be Haitians who might have come from a different country.
Does that make maybe. Sense? Well, Haiti shares so on that island is Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Maybe that.
So I'm reading one of the links right now, and I'm looking at the second paragraph here, and it says, it talks about somebody named Delva. Delva, along with nearly 2,000 other Haitians, was deported from southern Texas this week to Haiti, despite having lived in Chile for the past 6 years and having few remaining connections to his home country. His younger daughter, who is 4, does not hold Haitian citizenship, having been born in Chile and speaks more Spanish than Haitian Creole. So even though this guy was born in Haiti, his daughter was not.
Yeah, that's bizarre, man.
Yeah, it could be like they might have been staying in Chile for years as refugees. I don't really know this person's story. Yeah, so I think that would explain that sentence. So that makes sense.
All right. So going on in this Guardian article, images at the U.S.-Mexico border captured by photojournalist Paul Raji showed two black men being pursued by a white security agent on horseback who used his reins like a whip. Humans being treated like cattle is horrifying enough in any context, but the images were particularly repellent in a country founded on slavery.
Yeah, there's no fucking way you can make this image at all in any like plausible way look good. It's fucking horrendous. It's fucking barbaric is what it is.
I mean, it's a throwback.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going throwback Thursday.
No shit.
We going old school on these motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? That's what I saw it as. I'm like, he's just going old school on them black people.
No.
And of course, I was horrified and disgusted. But I'm in my head, I'm like, man, this brother, this motherfucker, this cracker, he going old school on these people. So continuing, there was relief when the regime of Donald Trump left the White House, but the photos left many wondering if this is the change they voted for. And pause right here, because that's when. So when I thought Donald Trump was going to, did I say Donald Trump? Shit, I meant Orange's Anus Face. When I thought Orange's Anus Face was going to win the election again, something that gave me solace was the fact that both of them play for the same team. If you really think about it, because both of them. You know, what can they do about the border? They're not, you know, like we are, like you and I are. They're not amnesty people.
Yeah, they don't care. They serve rich interests, even if they have different goals. But
yeah,
like,
and unfortunately, Orange's Anus Face, his party, they treat more right wing rich people. Democrats, they still treat rich people. But it's more reasonable rich people. And I'd rather have the reasonable rich people than the right wing rich people. So yeah.
I would rather have honestly neither in power. I would rather have a system of, how do I describe this? I basically want the working class to be making decisions.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, and working class is a pretty big term. It's a big block of people. People who are middle class can arguably be said are working class. Basically, if you have to work for a living, you're pretty much working class. So
I think it's on the job too. I mean,
yeah. So that said, you want me to carry on this paragraph?
No, I can finish it up.
All right.
So the author, Eden Thomas, asked this good question: Is trading someone who promotes, initiates, and supports evil? This author has in quotation marks Trump, but I'll say Orange's Anus Face. So is trading someone who promotes, initiates, and supports evil Trump for someone who allows evil to continue Biden an improvement? So that's a pretty good question.
Oh, I agree. So I'm going to carry on here. And those who have doubts include athletes in the NBA, where 75% of players are black, some of them with roots in Haiti. Olden Polynice, a human rights activist and 15-year-old NBA veteran, was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. During a recent appearance on my podcast, this guy being Eden Thomas, of course, didn't know he had a podcast too. I asked him for his thoughts on the treatment of Haitians at the border. My first reaction was sadness. I've seen this movie before. In 1993, when I did my hunger strike to protest U.S. policies on Haitian refugees, we had the same situation. But it wasn't the coronavirus back then. It was the AIDS epidemic. And America was spreading the false notion that Haitians were bringing AIDS into the country, and then they began putting them in Guantanamo Bay.
Oh, my God.
So I have already seen this. It's history repeating itself. If there's anything you take away from this segment, I hope it's that last sentence. It's history repeating itself. The end of historic injustices are exactly what NBA players have fought for in recent years, highlighted mostly clearly in the months after the police murder of George Floyd. Former NBA All-Star Joakim Noah told me the stories at the border were a reminder that the journey is not over. The image of Border Patrol agents on horseback wicking Haitian... I'm butchering that. I'm going to redo that. The images of Border Patrol agents on horseback whipping Haitian asylum seekers are appalling and unacceptable. Those are human beings who have lost everything and are knowingly willing to face such injustices to their human rights because there aren't any better options, he said. Of course, immigration is complex, but no human being should be treated like an animal in order to find a better life. It's shameful and inhumane. We fought so hard over the past few years to shed light on police brutality in brown and black communities, and to hold accountable those who abuse their positions of power. We need to hold the Biden administration accountable to process immigrants and asylum seekers according to international law, and to hold Border Patrol and vigilantes accountable for their abuse of power. The fact that there are fucking vigilantes involved at all.
Yeah.
Like the volunteer fucking... God, what's that fuck? Who are those fucking chuds that volunteer to be Border Patrol?
Talking about their name?
No, those groups. I'm trying to remember the name.
I think I remember.
Oh, they have all kinds of names, apparently.
Border crackers?
Border crackers.
I don't know.
Cracker borders. There's Arizona Border Recon. That's one group.
Oh, I love how they're militarized too. Their names are militarized. Recon.
Yeah, it's just some dumb...
These guys whose penises are so small, they gotta have like militarized names to feel like a man.
Yeah, wearing fucking camo fatigues. Like, I'm looking at one of them right now. This dude's fucking out of shape, holding his gun. He's a...
Yeah, he's a big belly too. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Who the fuck is this guy? Founder Tim Foley of Arizona Border Recon. I can't even remember the name. I'm like on 5 hours of sleep today.
No, me too.
So
I'm always on that.
Yeah. So just so you all know, Arizona Border Recon is an American paramilitary militia group in Arizona composed of former military, law enforcement, and private security contractors. Tim Foley, a former construction supervisor and United States Army veteran, formed the group in 2011. Wow. As of March 2018, the group had 250 volunteers operating in the Altar Valley and Sasabe, Arizona, armed with personal weapons, including pistols, shotguns, and semi-automatic rifles. AZBR originally targeted illegal immigration, but as of 2015, had stated a goal of disrupting drug smuggling and trafficking across the United States-Mexico border, and preventing infiltration by foreign terrorists. Wow, these people sound like they're fucking qualified.
Well, I'm saying, if they're black or brown, of course they're dealing drugs or doing something illegal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, here's one. In August 2019, the expelled member, Joshua Pratchard, was sentenced with 6 years to prison for illegal gun ownership, manufacture of firearms, and their sale. The militia expelled him, saying he did not want to follow their rules, including repeatedly asking to get physical with detainees and demanding to put on a silencer on his weapon, and their recklessness when it comes to, quote, stalking bandits, unquote.
Oh, God. I bet a lot of these guys are incels, too.
Just fucking jerking their guns like it's their dicks.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So, those are some of the people that Haitian refugees have to fucking watch out for, especially if they're crossing from Texas or into Texas from Mexico. Whew.
One thing I'm wondering, though, is what can Biden do, though? What can... Because, I mean, you got to think about the national government, too. Congress, the House of Representatives, Senate, the judicial branch. You got to think about those things, too. People put way too much emphasis on the president. And I was even saying that when Orange Anus-Face was president. There's only so much they can do.
Like, Congress has responsibility on this, too. Don't get me wrong, but
Congress has the most power in our political system.
Yeah, but the president
at least
also
in the Constitution.
Yeah, but the president also has like options for executive orders. I mean, they're not like end all be all solutions, obviously, but it's something that could be done to rein in.
I wonder that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do wonder that because, like, what I'm wondering is, why can't you say executive order? Why can't? What's stopping them from doing that?
Right.
Yeah.
So on that note, would you like to continue reading while I take a quick break?
Yeah.
I will be right back.
So after a few days of anger from the public, so Biden condemned the inhumane treatment of the Haitians and said that anyone who mistreated refugees at the Mexican border will pay. So it's important to note that, though, that the details of this about actual policy change were absent from Biden's remarks. So there's no suggestion that America will now abandon the mass deportations and give the Haitians some dignity and opportunities they gave to refugees of other nationalities. Continuing, Biden's comments far exceed anything Trump was willing to do. After all, Trump, couldn't even condemn white supremacists after the 2017 Charlottesville hate rally. But quote unquote, better than Donald, unquote, is a low bar for Biden to set himself. And so what is next is a quote from Polynice. Hopefully I said that name right. I like that name, Polynice. We voted for these people, and politicians can be some of the biggest gangsters in the world. Holy shit, that's right. That's right. And whatever they say to get elected isn't always what they're going to be do after getting in office. They say, bring us your tired and your huddled masses and come to a place of freedom. But the problem is, it's not for everyone. It should be about human rights, but these people don't see it that way, says Polynice. And I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Polynice. I like it.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm pronouncing like a Greek name, Polynice.
We want to put some respect on his name.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, man, that comment about the gangsters in the world, man, that's some real talk right there, right? Some of the biggest gangsters in the world, politicians. Mm-hmm. Woo. Oh, my God. And so the Haitians deserve the same that you gave to the Cubans that came over here. Oh, the Cubans were capitalists, though.
Not all of them.
Editorial note. The same that you gave to the Afghans, the same that any other group of people received from the United States. No more, no less. Just give us the respect of valuing our human rights. That's all we want. America voted for a changing of the guard. In some cases, NBA players actively assisted in that change. The expectation for a massive change in the policy, but rounding up human beings like cattle at the border seems like same old America to many of us. That's like in a poem, right?
Oh, yeah.
Langston Hughes. I can see Langston Hughes. Same old America to us.
You have such a way of bringing dialogue to life in a way where I just read it off, just like it's an audio book or something.
Teaching as well.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of practice at that, my teaching.
You bring the emotion. You bring the juice to this.
Hey, I'm grandma. You got the juice now.
Oh.
Shoot, I ain't no grandma.
But yeah.
I don't know what just popped in my head. Sorry.
So that was...
I randomly say that.
Yeah, why'd you call me grandma? What the fuck?
I don't know. I was thinking of the movie Juice, At the end of the movie, you got the juice now, grandma. Over your head, sorry.
All right. All right. Moving on. All right. So how about we check out the Slate article? We got about what? 10 minutes before we start talking about our main subject.
No, it relates, though.
It all relates.
The Slate article, the decades-old delusion at the heart of the American immigration policy.
Mm-hmm. The fantasy of orderly mass migration is having a renaissance by Ben Mathis-Lilly of Slate. Starts off with a picture of a U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agent pulling a Haitian woman out from the Rio Grande near Ciudad Acuna, Mexico on Thursday. My God.
Hey, and bless that border agent's heart. They're doing a good thing. They're pulling people out of the water.
I hope that's all that's happening.
Yeah, I hope nobody's whipping anybody like that other border agent.
So, to begin, undocumented attempts to cross the U.S.-Mexico border on the rise, up more than 50% from their pre-COVID 2019 peak. Some are being made by natives of Mexico and migrants from the northern triangle of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. But there are also Haitians who fled the country that was violent and unstable even before the devastating series of events that occurred there this summer. It was Haitian refugees who were being chased by mounted Border Patrol agents in photos that circulated widely last week. The Biden administration responded to outrage over those historically troubling images. Interesting choice of words. Historically troubling.
Yeah, they're going to be in history books, yes.
Yeah. By announcing that the Border Patrol agents won't be allowed to ride horses anymore while they are capturing refugees for deportation. Wow, how humane of them. They won't get to ride horses.
That's like the fun part of their job, riding horses. What the fuck?
Wow, how humane. Very good.
How's that help me get my ass whipped by a whip?
Don't these guys, can't they just ride around in like four-wheelers and motorcycles and shit? Or whatever the fuck, trucks? Like, they have vehicles at the border that Border Patrol agents use, right? Like, they have trucks and shit. Biden has made the controversial decision to extend his predecessor's pandemic-era policy of using the Title 42 public health law to deny all attempts to claim asylum at the border. So what is the Title 42 public health law in question here?
I think it's like, coronavirus is gone now, is an epidemic or a pandemic now. So we can't have any more people in.
So yeah, if you click on that, links to a website called The Conversation, and an article titled Haitian Migrants at the Border, an asylum law scholar explains how the United States skirts its legal and moral duties. Written by a professor of international law, Dr. Karen Musalo, University of California, Hastings. Oof. So what is the law? We understand the background so far.
Well, speaking of laws, right? Can't we... Fucking lawyers, man. Lawyers. Mm-hmm. Lawyers out there, all lawyers, man. We need to train lawyers to write laws that normal people can read, right? It's fucking people speak another language.
Yeah, but it's deliberately structured that way for reasons.
Well, they can I'll deliberately beat their ass for writing like that.
Just gonna fight a bunch of lawyers out in the street.
I'll beat all of them up, fucking lawyers.
Probably the last group of people you want to beat up.
Lawyers. Well, first of all, like Charles Houston said, a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite.
Oh, I agreed.
Yeah. Charles Houston, just the man that's responsible for ending segregation by law in this country. So
this goes into the a little bit more about Title 42. Even before COVID-19 struck, Trump administration aide Stephen Miller had inquired about using the government's public health authority to shut U.S. borders to people seeking asylum. He was told that there was no legal authority to do so. The emergence of the pandemic provided a pretext for the unprecedented rise or unprecedented use of this little-known law dating back over 75 years. It formed part of the Public Health Service Act of 1944 to allow for the quarantine of anyone, including a U.S. citizen, arriving from a foreign country. It was never intended, nor until 2020 was used, to expel non-citizens from the United States. In fact, when Congress enacted the initial version of this law, references to immigration were deliberately omitted precisely to avoid the use of its provisions to discriminate against immigrants. But the March 2020 order by the Trump administration targets one group and one group only: non-citizens who lack documentation and arrive by land. All other people arriving in the U.S., including American citizens, lawful permanent residents and tourists arriving by plane or ship are exempt. As currently employed by the government, this public health law has displaced existing immigration law, which allows people to request asylum. And in doing so, it also has eliminated the due process protections that are part of our immigration laws. On September 16th, a federal court found the use of Title 42 to expel people seeking asylum to be a clear violation of United States law and granted a preliminary injunction against the practice. The court stayed its own order for 14 days to allow the government an opportunity to appeal the decision.
Insidious. That's the word I come up with.
Yeah, that's some insidious shit.
And look who started this too. Even before COVID-19 struck, Trump administration aide Stephen Miller had inquired about using the government's public health authority to shut U.S.
A law.
Miller, the bald-headed geek. You bald-headed geek.
Bald-headed geek. Is that the worst thing we can say about Stephen Miller? Is he's fucking bald?
It's from a wrestler. It's from a wrestler, Pez Watley, back in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Bald-headed geek. He's got a bald-headed geek.
All right, I'm going to go back to the Slate article here.
Man, ain't that fucked up though, man?
Yeah, of course it's fucked up. It's fucking sinister. It's fucking evil.
Sinister. The perfect word. That guy, man, he's got like evil thoughts running through his head, man. His bald-headed geek head. Bald-headed geek. We gonna get you, but in a positive way, not in a negative, violent way, because we do not advocate violence against people on this podcast.
There we go.
We're going to vote you out of office, Stephen Miller. Wait a minute. Are you even in office?
No.
You bald-headed geek.
He's not in office.
You bald-headed geek.
I don't even know if you're running for government or not, but I'm going to put you out of office anyway.
I'm going to vote you out of office anyway, you bald-headed geek.
I don't care if you're working at the post office. I'm voting you out.
We got to make light of this stuff. Oh, because we'll go crazy, man.
It was a farcical manifestation of the White House's underlying problem. Stuck between its commitment to be more humane than the Trump administration and the general public's long-standing unwillingness to open the border to hundreds of thousands of migrants and refugees at once. It's tried to find a middle ground of projecting empathy and concern while carrying out mass deportations in the hopes that people will stop coming to the border in the first place. Wow. Empathy and concern while carrying out mass deportations.
It's like, where you gotta go? It's like, I don't care where you go, just don't come to my house. You ain't gotta go home.
It's like, yeah, we're gonna ship you off to be where you'll probably be shot by somebody when you get back. But, we really care. We really are empathetic. See, we're giving you empathy because, yeah, we can experience and imagine how bad that must feel, but we're gonna do it anyway. We'll do it even if it makes us feel sad. According to reporting in the New York Times, this is supposedly part of a progressive long game. What the fuck is progressive about this? So they're showing off a tweet here by somebody named Zolong Kano Youngs. Is this dude a journalist? He's got a blue check mark. Who's this guy? He's a White House correspondent, CNN analyst, former DHS reporter, Wall Street Journal alum, dabbling in screenwriting. Okay. So he's quoting here. Several officials said that Susan Rice has been a leading proponent of more aggressive enforcement, arguing that it is more compassionate to pursue an immigration system that is orderly in order to pass border reforms. So he's not
Whenever
saying
you hear the word order. No, law and order, orderly. No, that's not good. That's dog whistle.
Yeah. Thank you, Zola.
Get the black and brown people out of here. That's what that means.
I like this dude. He's cool. Let's see. There's some internal logic to the idea. Many Americans say they support immigration so long as it's done legally by waiting for one's turn in line, but are alarmed by the idea of people walking into the country through the southwestern desert and going wherever they want. In theory, if you were able to dissuade or disincentivize potential immigrants from massing at the southern border or trying to cross it without authorization, you could gain enough public trust on the issue to expand the number of people who were allowed to come through the proverbial front door. It's not working, though, and to understand why, consider the centerpiece buzzword of the Biden border strategy, quote unquote, orderly.
I was just saying that. Bam.
The purported goal of orderliness is all over the administration's thinking on the subject, including the Times paraphrase of Susan Rice's position and the statement released this week after the Special State Department envoy to Haiti resigned in protest. That individual, Daniel Foote, condemned Biden's policy towards Haitians as inhumane and counterproductive, to which state responded that the United States remains committed to supporting safe, orderly, and humane migration throughout our country.
You would think you would think the Democrats, at least, like Biden and his people, would not use the word order, right? I mean, hello, McFly!
How do you humanely deport people to a country that is completely dangerous and unstable? Like, it's like if you were to get, hypothetically, let's say you got like refugees from Chernobyl and you humanely deported them back to the site where the Chernobyl meltdown occurred. Like, I don't understand the humaneness part here. You know, where's the humanity aspect? Because this seems just like marketing to me.
What I'm thinking of Martin. You know, Martin Lawrence's TV show, Martin.
Oh,
he has an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he has an episode where he kicks everybody out of his apartment, right? He's like, y'all ain't got to go home, but y'all can't be here. Leave, get out. So that's what I'm thinking. He's giving them the Martin treatment. He's giving these refugees the Martin treatment. Oh,
yeah. Shoot. So we already 1 hour in. Do you want to continue? Do you want to finish this one off and then move on? Or what do you want to do?
Let's move on to our main topic.
Yeah. So I think we've done a pretty decent job at highlighting what the fuck is happening. I think a good summary is that right now there's a humanitarian crisis going on.
Yes.
And the government pursuing this delusional strategy of orderly migration in a time of like catastrophe is deporting people back into the situation they are distinctly trying to get away from. So there is a quote I really like by a poet. Let me see if I can pull it up. So are you familiar with a British poet born to Somali parents in Kenya named Warsan Shire?
No.
So she has a very short poem called Home. And I'm just going to read you the first bit of it here. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well.
Yeah, that's deep. Because you got to think of too. I even think about that in respect to abusive relationships, right? A lot of people in abusive relationships won't leave, right? Because they're like, well, I don't know what's on the other side if I do leave. So yeah, like that person was saying, man, you got to really be like effed up something has to be really effed up in your life, in your home to want to leave your home.
Home has to be the mouth of a shark if you're willing to endure the bullshit that we just described at the border. And bullshit is really just that's a toned down way of fucking describing the situation.
Yeah. And making the trek too across miles and miles upon water. Hundreds of miles upon water.
Yeah, or just by foot. Jeez. Because remember, a lot of these people are crossing just by foot. They're not going by boat, or some of them I'm sure are going by boat, but
just imagine an idyllic time where people can go anywhere they want to go. You know, think about like Don Quixote and knights of old, knight errants who used to go on their horses wherever the adventure led them to. That's movement. That's freedom. That's what everybody on this planet should be able to do. Get rid of borders. Get rid of all of that stuff that man creates. Let's just move around, man. What the hell people scared of? What are they scared of, man?
What are you afraid of, America? What are you afraid of, Western man? All right. So, we are now going to be switching gears once again. But because we are talking about Texas, our favorite state in the world, we are going on part 2 of our mini-series of the history of Mexico and the state of Texas. So, last time, we kind of gave a bit of an overview of the history between Mexico and Texas. It was kind of, structurally, admittedly, it was kind of a mess, but I think it does give a pretty good general idea of what that history was like.
You gave an excellent overview of the instability of the Mexican government at the time. I think that was the point of. I think that's what you meant when you described it as a mess. The Mexican government at this time that we're talking about was a mess,
a hot mess.
Yeah.
And we're going to be focusing on an individual this time. And you could arguably say he has contributed a great deal to the hot mess of Mexico's government at this time. So for the Americans in the audience, you might, if you're old enough anyway, you might recognize this figure as sort of like a villain of sorts. So, Martin, do you remember that old ass, I think it was Disney or whatever who came out with it back in the day? It was like black and white, and it was about Davy Crockett.
No, I do not.
Yeah, so Disney, it's an old...
Don't trust anything from them.
Yeah, you should not. So it came out, and I seen this as a little kid. It came out in 1954, and it's literally called Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. And I remember by the end of it, I think.
Let me look that up too.
Oh yeah. It was, and it had this like really old timey like theme song too, where it's like Davy Crockett, man of the wild frontier. It's like really fucking corny. So. In that show, if I remember right, kind of in the last season it's the 3rd episode here. It features the Alamo. And the bad guy, or at least how Disney portrayed him, the bad guy is none other than General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. And for anybody who just knows about what happens at the Alamo, they all fucking died.
Yeah, good riddance, you ass monkeys.
But in the show, like Davy Crockett's death isn't shown. all it's shown is like David Crockett is the last survivor in the battle on the parapet, swinging his rifle at the oncoming, oh god damn it, I can't speak today. The oncoming hordes of Mexican soldiers. The picture fades and the flag of Texas is shown, flying in the breeze as the male chorus reprises the last lines of the Ballad of Davy Crockett. So, needless to say, the Alamo in American history it's a bit propagandized, wouldn't you say?
Oh,
so
propagandized. You're putting it mildly.
Oh yeah, it is lionized. Despite the fact that the United States officially didn't really have a role in this conflict. It took place during the Texan Revolution, where Texas won its independence from Mexico, and the Alamo became this iconic place where, when you think about it, like, most people really associate the Alamo with like the old chapel, you know? And in pictures, when you Google like the Alamo, you'll eventually see the other parts of it. But the very first thing that usually comes up in any picture is like the old dingy chapel. And you kind of get the idea, like, at least when I was a kid reading this shit, because you didn't get to see all the fortifications around the Alamo. The Alamo was actually a fucking fortress. It's kind of like a garrison. So it had like it had palisades, it had cannons, it had trenches. It was pretty well fortified. And in that battle, it's like a combination of Anglo volunteers, Anglo settlers, Tejanos, and of course Davy Crockett, versus fighting the United States of Mexico's army under the leadership of Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who we're going to find out is a very, very, very important figure. So in one of the sources here, I guess you could say Santa Anna is basically, let me see here. I'm trying to find it. The man of destiny who loomed over his time like a melodramatic colossus, the uncrowned monarch. And that's a quote from, let's see here. Mexico, Biography of Power by Enrique Krauss. So,
I see where you're at, yeah.
For his time, he's a pretty big deal. And he plays a very pivotal role in both the history of Texas and Mexico, more so Mexico, though. So, before I go on, you got anything you want to add before we move on, Martin?
Well, I'm looking at a picture of this dude. Well, several pictures of him, actually, you know. I'm checking this guy out in a platonic way.
Admiring.
Yeah, you know, admiring, you know, from one guy to another, you know. And man, this guy has good hair. I like him. I like this guy's hair. He's got a big forehead though. Oh my gosh. You could play a movie on that. He
had a big old forehead. Like, I'm looking at some of these. Like, I thought my hairline was receding. Actually, you know what? Because there's these illustrations of him where he's younger. He pulls out that look.
Oh, he pulls out that look. He looked like he's about to roam through a VD, verbal diarrhea. I'm pausing on that. But anyway, yeah. He's a handsome gentleman as a young man.
He's hot as hell as a young man. But
he rivals Stalin as a young man.
He kind of makes the mistake of keeping the same hairstyle that he has as a young man into his older years. And it doesn't really look too well on him on that point. At that point, you just want to shave your head. But anyway.
It's a fashion podcast.
Damn right it is. We talk about politics, we talk about history, we talk about social issues, and we talk about fashion.
We talk about Miss Fashion, honey, okay?
we like a little fashion runway here as a treat.
Oh my goodness.
But in all seriousness, so if you are not from Mexico or simply don't have much familiarity with Mexican history, you might be asking yourself, who was Santa Anna?
Santa Anna.
We're gonna.
I love it, dude. Hold on, man. I just gotta pause because I love like these Mexican names. It's not like we in the United States of America, just regular white Americans. We got like 3 names, right? Our first, middle, and last. I love these names, man. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. That's awesome.
And that's not even the full name. There's a fuller name.
Oh, there's a fuller name. Jeez.
So
it blew my goddamn mind.
So who was Santa Anna? Well, history remembers him as Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. His fuller name was Antonio de Padua Maria Severino Lopez de Santa Anna y Perez de Lebrón.
Awesome.
So
I'm changing my name. How about this? My first name and then my last name and then of the city that I'm from. And then I'll put a Don or a Sir in front of my first name.
A Don?
Like Don Quixote.
Okay. That works.
Right? And I'll also be known as the genius of love, because I've got a greater depth of feeling and I'm so deep. But anyway, I freaking love this long name, man.
Oh, yeah. So this man, he was the 8th president of Mexico. However, despite being the 8th president, and it gets a little complicated here because Santa Anna served 11 terms, which makes things very complicated to follow and keep track of. He was a former general. He was a war hero. He was... Oh, goodness. What else? He personified what was called Caudillismo. And it was like this trend in this time in Mexico and other places as well, in which military strongmen and warlords basically dominated national politics and affairs. It's like they were less motivated by ideology and more so with personal interests. And you see this a lot in the life story of Santa Anna as well. So
this just makes me think, can we retire the definition or recognition of president, the word president? If you could serve the president, let's think of another name. If you're serving 11 stints as president, ain't you like leader for life?
Well, he does later on in his life establish himself as a bit of a dictator of sorts.
There you go.
After his first administration, anyway, he takes on a more dictatorial role. So let's get on. Let's learn more about Santa Anna and see how this particular individual really affected the history of Mexico and Texas. All right, so I shared with you some of my notes. So would you like to read some about his early life?
Yeah. All right, so this guy, the guy with one of the coolest names in history, right? So he was born 1794 to a middle class, and this word, Criollo, Criollo.
And as you can see, I included a hyperlink. So
is every freaking word in Spanish like awesome to pronounce? I mean, it just flows off the tongue, man.
Yeah. So for the audience's sake,
Criollo,
which this background does actually come into quite a bit of importance historically, especially in Santa Anna's lifetime. A Criollo is a term used originally to describe people of Spanish descent born in the colonies of Latin America. In different Latin American countries, the word came to have different meanings, sometimes referring to the local-born majority. So it's a term that kind of originates during the time of the Spanish Empire in America. So he's coming from a middle-class family in the city of Jalapa in Veracruz at the time when Mexico was still considered New Spain. So he came from a pretty respectable family. His father was a lawyer, and the men of his family often held these second-rank civic, royal, and church roles. In addition to that, his mother also had friendly relations with the governor of Veracruz, which plays a big role in his military career. So,
connected.
Yes. So
connected
pretty connected, especially in Veracruz. Veracruz and Santa Ana have this very tight connection, where Veracruz essentially is like the long-term power base for Santa Ana, especially in his rise to power. So he's coming from this respected family, and during his childhood, the Bourbon reforms are passed throughout the Spanish Empire. So you might be wondering, what the hell are the Bourbon reforms?
I don't know, but it sounds like it can get you drunk.
You wish. Unfortunately, it was not. So the Bourbon reforms consisted of political and economic legislation promulgated by the Spanish crown under various kings of the House of Bourbon since 1700, mainly in the 18th century. The beginning of the new crown's power of clear lines of authority to officials contrasted to the complex system of government that evolved under the Habsburg monarchs. For example, the crown pursued state supremacy over the Catholic Church, pushed for economic reforms, and placed power solely in the hands of civil officials. So, pretty transformative. But we're going to see here in a bit that these reforms really ruffled some feathers with people living in the colonies of the Spanish Empire, especially criollos.
Yeah, okay.
So, more or less, the Bourbon reforms hindered, or it privileged, Iberian-born Spaniards. In additionally,
hold on. Push. So they. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So looking at my other source here. So these reforms occurred kind of as a response from British incursions and Enlightenment investigations. You know, it is a consequence of the Enlightenment.
Yeah. So I guess to sum that up, these Bourbon reforms basically say, look, if you were not born in Spain, you know, you are not going to have the same privileges as people who are.
Right.
And you lose opportunities for upward mobility, and you lose opportunities to just live your best life.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, that's it. So one of the reasons for this kind of privileging what are called peninsulares, peninsula-born Spaniards over, you know, American-born Spaniards was one of the reasons was economic. So the crown was trying to improve the economic situation in Spain. So the way to do that was to create more opportunities for economic achievement and growth for Iberian-born Spaniards.
And those born on the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal.
And because there were many peninsular Spaniards in New Spain at this time, the crown wanted to make sure that eventually the money was going to go back to Spain. And the people who were going to do that, most likely anyway, were going to be peninsulares. So given the fact that Santa Ana was coming from a Criollo family, born in America, they essentially lost a lot of opportunities to achieve upward mobility, as well as other Creoles who were living in New Spain at this time.
And when you say born in America, for those out there, do not think that we are talking about the United States of America. We're talking about the Americas.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Americas. So the Americas, which consist of North America, Central America, and South America. We're all American.
Yeah.
All of us.
Exactly. So this essentially pissed off a lot of people towards the Spanish crown.
And you know what, too?
Mm-hmm.
It's pissing off the wrong people. And what I mean by that is it's pissing off the relatively middle and upper middle class people. What happens when those people get pissed off? What happened in the American colonies, in the British colonies, the 13 original colonies? What happened?
Things got spicy.
Yeah, they started a quote unquote revolution. And that's also a lot of what happened around when you talk about, you piss off should we call them the bourgeoisie?
I guess. I mean, well, hell, even if you go back in time, you look at the foundation of the Roman Republic, who did the monarchy at the time piss off? They pissed off the patricians. And for any of you who know any Roman history, you know what follows after that.
What, the Republic next?
Yeah. So even though
also the rape of Lavinia, but I don't know if that's more a lot of mythology, but yeah.
Yeah. So even though the Bourbon reforms weren't necessarily a direct cause of the future Mexican War of Independence, they were definitely a contributing factor. So
yeah, don't piss off rich people, y'all, or relatively well-off people.
Yeah, it should be don't piss off the poor. But
it should be, yeah, but
so
in the French Revolution, though, woo,
oh yeah. So yeah, his father, Santa Anna's father, wants him to get into a career in business, but Santa Anna doesn't want to do that. He's looking towards the military. And when he's 16, he successfully enlists in Spain's Royal Army, and he secures a position as an officer, I believe, at age 16, because of his mother's friendly relationship with the governor of Veracruz. And this was during a time in Mexico's history where military service was still one of the few ways you could obtain social mobility.
Actually, this is kind of remind me a lot of Napoleon, man.
Oh, yeah. You could argue that. And I think Santa Anna himself.
Yeah, because Napoleon Bonaparte came from like a family like him. They weren't poor, they weren't rich, but they were kind of upper, you know? And Napoleon, during this time, Napoleon came of age during the French Revolution. But one of the things that the new government of France said is that just like what's happening here, it's basically saying, hey, if you come from this family, your chances for upward mobility, you're losing opportunities. And that's what that reminds me of.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels there.
Oh, yeah.
So, and as you imagine in his life, Santa Anna essentially styles himself as a Napoleon of the West. So Santa Anna, at age 16, starts his military career in June 1810, right at the beginning of a series of conflicts, which eventually becomes Mexico's War of Independence. So, a thing to note about the War of Independence, right, is that it wasn't like this one big coordinated movement to secure independence from Spain. It's more like a bunch of local and regional struggles that are all happening at the same time. And it's kind of more like a revolutionary civil war. So independence wasn't directly like the only outcome that could have happened in this, you know?
Yeah.
So like one of the things that kicks off the Mexican War of Independence, and it's actually one of the first conflicts that Santa Anna actually engages in his military career, is what's called the Hidalgo Revolt. So do you have that pulled up real quick?
I thought I did. Hold on, let me pull that mug up. So the Hidalgo Revolt.
So
it's in the Mexican. Okay.
Yeah.
War for Independence. Let me see here. Okay. Yeah.
So this revolt is led by a guy named Miguel Hidalgo. His full name, Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla. Fuller name, Don Miguel Gregorio Antonio Ignacio Hidalgo y Costilla y Gallaga Mandarte Villaseñor. So, who was Don Hidalgo? He was a Catholic priest, and this should also be important, like stressed. He was a Criollo Catholic priest.
Oh, okay.
And he's recognized as the father of the nation. So he was a professor at the Colegio de San Nicolas.
Yeah, he's a teacher.
Obispo. Yeah. In Valladolid. Until he was ousted in 1792. He served in a church in Colima and then Dolores. So after his arrival, he was shocked by the rich soil he found. And he tries to help the poor by showing them how to grow olives and grapes. But in New Spain, which would become Mexico, growing these crops was discouraged or prohibited by the authorities so as to avoid competitions with imports from Spain. So in 1810, he gives this very famous speech. And in Spanish, it's called the El Grito de Dolores, or the Cry of Dolores, because it occurred in the city of Dolores, Mexico. So at this time, he's a Roman Catholic priest, and he rings his church bell, and he gives a call to arms that essentially triggers a series of events that leads to the Mexican War of Independence. So let's see.
Interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, do you have anything
in that famous speech, he's calling on the people to protect the interest of their king, Fernando VII, held captive by Napoleon by revolting against the European-born Spaniards who had overthrown the Spanish viceroy?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it has like this almost revolutionary tone to it, but he's really decrying against bad, corrupt government. He's not really necessarily calling for like this complete independent state.
Because it's weird. It's sounding revolutionary, but it's actually not revolutionary because he's trying to protect the status quo of Spain, who was held captive by Napoleon. So it's sort of like, you know, when former President Orange's Anus Face, you know, when Orange's Anus Face went on TV on the day of the Capitol riots, and half of his speech was foaming them on, and half of it was like, "No, y'all need to stop." It's sort of like, that's what I kind of get from this speech.
Yeah. And like you said, and you've noticed here, the Cry de Dolores doesn't actually even condemn the idea of monarchy. It doesn't even really criticize the social order, but it's more, you know, criticizing, you know, or expressing condemnation of what's happening in Spain and the viceregal government. So he also emphasizes, you know, his loyalty to the Catholic faith. And it's, in a way, it's supposed to be like this sentiment that the Creoles and Peninsulares can both kind of get behind. And essentially leads to a armed uprising. And it gets a lot of support. So even despite some of the conservative tones, there's also a lot of support from intellectuals, from liberal priests, and of course from the poor. And he permits Indians and mestizos to join in his war, and it basically kicks off an armed movement.
Yeah,
And he actually scores some victories too early on. But eventually, as you might expect, he eventually is forced to, let's see here, retreat. He gets to, let me see here, pull up my sources.
Man. This is like an onion, man. Layers on layers.
So essentially, they're marching towards Mexico City. And they clash with the Royalist army.
So Hidalgo.
So no, I mean the Royalist army that they're kind of fighting against, the Viceregal army, I guess you could say.
Okay.
So they're part of the insurgency. And they kind of score a tactical victory of sorts at what's called the Battle of Monte de la Cruces. And it's one of the major early battles of the Mexican War of Independence.
Yeah.
So it's fought between the armies of Miguel Hidalgo and Ignacio Allende against the Royalist forces of Lieutenant Colonel Torquato Trujillo. So as the result of the battle, even though it's technically a tactical victory, he kind of renounces the march towards New Mexico. So it's more kind of like a retreat at this point. And unfortunately, after I'm obviously fast forwarding, he eventually is captured and is executed in the state of Durango, I believe. Let me see here. Yeah, you got anything?
And so Santa Anna is active during this Hidalgo revolt, right?
Yeah, he is fighting for the Royalist side, the Viceregal army. So Hidalgo,
wait a minute, he's fighting on behalf of the Spanish crown?
Yeah.
Oh, so he's okay. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so Don Hidalgo is eventually turned over to the Bishop of Durango, a guy named Francisco Gabriel de Olivares. He's officially defrocked and excommunicated in July of 1811, found guilty of treason, and eventually executed, but not before he was tortured through the flaying of his hands, symbolically removing the chrism placed upon them at his priestly ordination. So he was probably either killed by a firing squad or he was decapitated.
Well, the fact that they mess his hands up reminds me of Cicero.
Yeah, and he does have some pretty iconic last words, too. Hidalgo stated at his execution, "Though I may die, I shall be remembered forever. You will all soon be forgotten." His body and the bodies of Allende, Aldama, and Jose Mariano Jimenez were decapitated. The heads were put on display in the four corners of the, Alhóndiga de Granaditas in Guanajuato, which is, it's a old grain storage building, essentially.
For once, I'd like to hear somebody die, get executed or whatever, and say, not these fanciful words, but just say, hey, go F your mother.
F your mother.
You know what I'm saying? Why they gotta be all like
his last
with it?
His last words. His last words are literally "fuck you."
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, you know what? Go F your mother. I just did that last night. She came into my cell. You know what I'm saying? I want to hear somebody talk some shit. What is this? Though I may die, I shall be remembered forever.
Well, he's technically not wrong.
But goddamn, he would have been remembered forever even if he would have told somebody to go after their mother.
Well, maybe he wanted to gloat about this, okay?
What's the better gloat than saying I made love to her? You know what I'm saying?
The man's a Catholic priest. What do you want him to say?
That would be even more scandalous, right?
He's not trying to be scandalous. He's trying to speak truth to power here. So
come on, man. If they ever execute me, although I would never do anything to be executed, you know what I'm saying.
So Right? When he and his compatriots are executed, their bodies are decapitated, and their heads are left to remain there for a whole decade until the end of the War of Mexican Independence, to serve as a warning to other insurgents. His lifeless body was first displayed outside the prison and then buried in the Church of San Francis in Chihuahua. And eventually his remains are transferred to Mexico City in 1824.
That's good, man. That's what you call heat or hatred against you.
Oh, yeah. So,
hell yeah.
Essentially, this is where Santa Anna gets his experience in warfare. And at the time, he is serving underneath. Let me see here. Where are my sources at? Damn it. There we go. I have all these tabs up. So he is serving under the command of Jose Joaquin de Arredondo, who is very proficient and ruthless at crushing these armed insurgents throughout the War of Independence. Eventually, however, let's see, because he began his military career in 1810. And around 1821, so that's 11 years? Yeah. 11 years into this, he actually switches sides. He joins the insurgency when a former royalist officer, who is a very important figure in this time period, a guy named Agustin de Iturbide, who becomes the first emperor of Mexico. But at this time, he's an officer. He switches sides to the insurgency when this guy joins the insurgency with another revolutionary hero, a guy, Vicente Guerrero.
First black president of Mexico.
And the second president of Mexico, no less.
Well, not only black, but indigenous, too. He's got indigenous and black roots.
Yeah, so Vicente Guerrero and Agustin de Iturbide, along with Santa Anna and others, join in the insurgency against the Spanish crown. So this is a reoccurring habit that we see throughout his whole career of switching sides. And it's likely more motivated by his personal interests than it is like an ideological one. So
he's kind of like a snake a little bit.
A bit of a snake, yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So in this year, let me see here. Yeah. So in February 24th of 1821, the year that he switches sides, Iturbide and Guerrero essentially make this revolutionary proclamation, and it's called the Plan of Iguala, or the Plan of the Three Guarantees. So they signed this document, and it kind of is in the final stage of the War of Independence from Spain. And the plan states that it's essentially almost like a manifesto, right? You know, what will Mexico become? What they plan for Mexico. They plan that Mexico is to become a constitutional monarchy with the official state religion being Roman Catholicism. And importantly, and I think this is where what really motivates Santa Anna to join with these guys, it plans to give in Mexico equal political and social rights to all people, but with an emphasis on peninsulares and Creoles. So remember, Santa Anna's family is Criollo. So this would definitely benefit him and his family, because it essentially puts him on equal ground with somebody who was born from Spain.
Yeah, but they're like 1 for 3 here. They want a constitutional monarchy, and the sole official religion will be Roman Catholicism, but they want equal political and social rights for everybody. Well, I'm sorry, if you have a monarchy, I don't give a constitutional or not. And if you make one official religion for the government, or the state, rather, there's not going to be equal social and political rights. These guys are shooting themselves in the foot in their other foot, and in their own dicks.
Well, some people are more equal than others. Let's just say that. So, around the same year, at the conclusion of the Mexican War of Independence in 1821, a agreement is signed between the commander of the forces of the Crown in New Spain. He is a Spanish officer and the last viceroy of New Spain, a guy named Juan O'Donoghue O'Ryan. And this guy, note his last name, O'Ryan.
This guy's like a French-Irish dude.
Yeah, well, this guy was actually born in Ireland, and he served the Spanish crown. So that's why his last name is O'Ryan. Okay. So he's technically an Irish guy fighting on behalf of the crown of Spain.
Well, he probably had red hair, but Canelo Alvarez has red hair too. So maybe interesting.
But yeah,
I wonder how many Irish people came over to Mexico.
Who knows? But anyway, yeah, 1821, he and Iturbide, who is kind of like the figurehead, or at least like the leader of this movement, they signed what is called the Treaty of Cordoba. And this establishes Mexico's independence, and it later gives way to the First Mexican Empire. Okay. An important thing to note, however, is that Spain, the crown, refused to actually recognize the treaty because it was signed only by O'Ryan, who was, commanding the armed forces in New Spain at the time. So there's some executive disagreement going on here. So Spain refuses to recognize the treaty and the independence of Mexico until 1836, when Spain and Mexico signed the Santa Maria Calatrava Treaty. And this formally recognizes Mexico's independence. So, practically speaking, they have won their independence with the Treaty of Cordoba.
Yeah, Spain's just salty, They're like,
Oh, yeah. So
salty Spaniards.
So at this time, Mexico essentially has a Congress of its own, right? And because Iturbide has a lot of popular support and demonstrations, Mexico's Congress offers him the throne to become the emperor of the First Mexican Empire. Now,
we got emperors now. Oh,
yeah.
My God.
Oh, and here's the thing I actually didn't list in my notes here was that the Congress actually sent representatives to Spain to see if there were any European royals who wanted to become Emperor of Mexico, but no one wanted it. No one was either available or wanted to become Emperor of Mexico. So
you know what that is probably. They didn't want to piss in the United States' pool.
I mean, that could be it. I don't know.
Let's go back to the Monroe Doctrine here.
Because this is all in 1821.
Let me see here. Because the Monroe Doctrine, I think that was in 1823.
Yeah.
So the Monroe Doctrine, just to provide a little context of what's going on in the USA, was a policy from the USA. It was a United States policy that opposed European colonialism in the Americas, which is South America, North America, and Central America. So what I'm thinking is why no Europeans took them up on that offer is they were afraid of the United States of America.
Yeah. So, the Monroe Doctrine essentially obligated European powers to recognize that the whole Western Hemisphere was the United States sphere of interest.
Yeah, it's their pool to play in.
And the doctrine warned all these European nations that the United States would not tolerate either further colonization or puppet monarchs.
Oh, there you go. Puppet monarch, there you go.
So I guess a more crude and simplistic way was that the Monroe Doctrine essentially told these European powers to back the fuck off. The only one who's going to do any imperializing here is the United States.
Yeah.
So, for whatever reasons, no European monarchs or royals wanted to take up the offer, so the Congress looks inward. And because Iturbide has a lot of public support, he's seen as essentially a war hero during this time. He's offered the throne, and he becomes Iturbide the first emperor of the First Mexican Empire.
I'd be pissed, man, if they didn't come to me first with that. It's like Julius Caesar said, I'd rather be number one in Rome than be second and then be first in a barbarian village or something like that. Something like that. But man, come on. I would be offended. You didn't come to me first. Excuse me? Excuse you, girl?
Well, when he's offered, he announces from his hacienda to this crowd of people that he has accepted the title and he becomes the Emperor of Mexico, and he rewards Santa Anna with command over the port of Veracruz. Remember, Veracruz is Santa Anna's home city, essentially. And Veracruz plays a very important role as a port city for trade and commerce. So he's getting a very important position, like militarily and economically. So later on, though, however, and as you'll see, some beef starts to form between Santa Anna and Iturbide in Veracruz. And eventually, Emperor Iturbide revokes Santa Anna's command over the port of the city of Veracruz. So this is also the result of a incident of sorts, where Santa Anna may or may not have tried to kill the guy trying to replace him. So, yeah, some serious beef. So at this time, because Santa Anna is not having any of this, Santa Anna, along with figures who weren't particularly happy that Mexico became an empire rather than a republic, kind of band together, and he sides with he sides with a few different figures, and they're all heroes of Mexico's War of Independence. One of them was Vicente Guerrero.
Yeah.
Another one was a guy named Nicolas Bravo, who in the future becomes Mexico's 11th president. But also probably equally importantly, Guadalupe Victoria, who later becomes Mexico's first president.
Good. And I like that too, because when we say Republican here, what we mean is a government that has representative democracy, I suppose, as opposed to an empire where one person is running the show. So,
yeah.
So Santa Anna is now going with the repubs.
He signed with the repubs, baby.
The repubs. All right.
So in this proclamation, and it's kind of co-signed, if I remember right, by Santa Anna and Guadalupe Victoria, they promise to essentially follow the principles of the original plan of Iguala. And they bring forth these arguments that kind of justify, their rebellion against the imperial government. Some of them were, let's see here. So at this time, one of the motivating factors for a lot of Republicans to rebel against the imperial government was this conflict between the imperial court, i.e. Iturbide, and the Congress. So as you'd imagine, it's kind of hard for there to be a balance between a emperor and a Congress of delegates, right?
Well, and who's making this government? This is a hodgepodge, man. This is a menagerie of governments.
Well, also keep in mind that Mexico was embroiled in a war with Spain for over a decade. Like, so at this time, Mexico is kind of feeling the after effects of the War of Independence. It's not doing too great financially. There's also a lot of other internal problems that the government's just not equipped to deal with.
Yeah, but here's what I'm wondering. Like, let me put on my pro-America hat here. Let me put on my pro-America. All right, I'm putting on my MAGA hat.
Oh boy, you have a MAGA hat, huh?
You got all right. So at this time period, Mexico, you got independence from Spain, right? 1821. You can come up with the Constitution. Why not make it like the United States of America with 3 branches of government, with a federalism, with shared power between the federal government and your provinces or regions or states, whatever. But this is complicated. This government structure that they have is complicated. It's like, oh, we got an empire, we got constitutional monarchy, we've got God damn, just copy and paste from America, man. Go America. Go to United States of America. Copy and paste from their constitution. Well, it's okay to plagiarize constitutions.
Well, here's a problem here, though. Mexico is at this time in the hands of a bunch of military strongmen, like Revolutionary War heroes and generals and shit. So, and that's kind of very different than what you had in the United States, what became the United States during the Revolutionary War, where, I mean, yeah, a bunch of rich people had a lot of influence and power, but they weren't necessarily, like warlords.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense too. Yeah.
And this goes back to this whole trend in Mexico at this time, of the regional caudillo. And Santa Anna is one of these caudillos. So they all want power, man. They all want to be top dog. Yeah. So from his stronghold in Veracruz, Santa Anna and company proclaim what's called the Plan of Veracruz.
Okay.
So the Plan of Veracruz, presents all these arguments, basically justifying the reasons for rebellion. But one of the main ones that kind of gives its Republican flavor was that Iturbide later dissolved the Constituent Congress. So because of the conflicts between Iturbide and the Congress, as emperor, he fucking dissolves, and I think he arrests a lot of the people who were in the Congress, and he replaces them with what was called this National Board.
National Board. That doesn't sound like a dictatorship.
Yeah, it sounds very, very democratic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So he comes out with all these plans and his reasons for the rebellion. So on top of that, too, he doesn't proclaim himself as the leader of this rebellion. He proclaims Guadalupe Victoria as the leader of the movement.
That's a little sneaky political maneuver right there.
Oh, yeah.
Put the heat on the other guy.
Essentially, yeah. And it's also probably because, too, that Guadalupe might have had more popularity. That could be it, too. There could have been a number of reasons.
I'm starting to think this Santa Anna guy is like one of those famed Chinese strategists, that we read about in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms.
Yeah, he comes off as a very Machiavellian guy.
Yeah, he's like that bald-headed geek, Stephen Miller, kind of.
Bald-headed geek? I can see that.
You bald-headed geek, we gonna get you, sucker! Dude, I gotta show you after what I'm talking about. I'm sorry.
So yeah, they start this rebellion against the imperial government. And although it starts to build the support, Iturbide has a lot of loyal forces that are able to hold themselves against the forces of Santa Anna and company pretty damn well. And eventually the movement starts to fracture a bit, because while Santa Anna is in Veracruz, you guys like Vicente Guerrero and Nicolas Bravo eventually go south instead. And they kind of raise their own rebellion against Iturbide. So it's kind of a very not well coordinated rebellion. And they actually suffer some serious setbacks during the war. Like eventually Santa Anna and Guadalupe are beaten back. And initially Santa Anna starts to plan a retreat into the United States and go into exile. But Guadalupe Victoria tells him to stay and like hold down the fort in Veracruz and to wait until he sees, Victoria's head. Then he should go to the United States to flee.
Okay.
So while this is all going on too, and something very important happens, and this kind of erupts into what's called the Castamada Plan Revolution.
Castamada?
Yeah.
Oh man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, the Castamada Plan Revolution. So the Castamada Plan Revolution, you could argue that it probably starts with the Santa Anna uprising. But it kind of goes on further. So initially, Vicente Guerrero and Nicolas Bravo defected from the imperialist faction. So I don't think they were outright supporting Santa Anna's uprising yet. So, because they're in two different parts of the country, right? So Vicente Guerrero and Nicolas Bravo, during the war, they defect from the imperialist faction and they rise up in rebellion in their own regions to join the revolution. But they get their asses whooped pretty badly at what's called the Battle of Amolanga. And it's kind of an imperialist victory at this point. And Vicente Guerrero is wounded in action. The imperialists in this particular battle are commanded by a guy named Jose Gabriel de la Armijo, who is also a fucking Caudillo.
Well, speaking of Caudillo, one thing I'm seeing as you're reciting this to us, one thing I'm seeing is, in my head, I'm comparing this to the American Revolution, right? The United States Revolution, I should say. And so to me, it seems like Mexico is so big that it's really hard to organize all these words and all these people together. And you keep this is factional warfare.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think you're really hitting home to us.
Right. So it's basically just straight up chaos at this point. I mean, you have an imperial government and you have these caudillos who are able to kind of command armies of their own to challenge the imperial government. It's pretty much straight up warlord era stuff. Yeah.
I can definitely see parallels to the end of the Han Dynasty.
Yeah. So
in ancient China.
Yeah. So even though the forces of Santa Anna, Vicente Guerrero, and Nicolas Bravo they're taking some pretty big losses, it's not enough to actually crush the rebellion. It's more like suppressive, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, putting out fires. But when you put one out, one appears over here and another one appears over there. So that's what I kind of see it.
Yeah.
It's less about crushing an entire rebellion and more about putting out fires.
Precisely. It's not going, I mean, it's got some initial success going on to put out some of the fires, but it's not enough to actually stop the fire itself. And
I would love to know the experiences of the everyday Mexican citizen during this time, you know? What was it like for them in this turbulent time period, I wonder? So
pretty fucking chaotic, I imagine.
Yeah, and also these armies. I'm like, how are they raising these armies? I wonder what they're doing. Because for me, I'm thinking about the history of the people, the soldiers.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about all that.
The common man.
Hell yeah, man.
So, one of the commanders of the imperial side at this time is a guy named Echevarri. I think it's Echevarri. And while this is happening, there's growing opposition to the imperial government within the military. So
that's bad.
At one point, while Santa Anna is still kind of confined in Veracruz and Victoria is still kind of confined to this place called Puente del Rey, so Echevarri is sent to basically deal with the rebels in Veracruz. However, he defects. This dude basically says, fuck the emperor, I'm defecting.
Yeah, I mean, you can write a romance epic of this time period in Mexican history. And what I mean by romance, I don't mean boy and girl fall in love. I don't mean that. I mean a romance, which is a dramatic retelling, I guess you can say, of this time. An epic format. That'd be pretty cool.
It is pretty much like an epic format. Yeah. Happening in Mexico right now. So let me see here. So they start to essentially form a new coalition now that the tides have changed, right? So they kind of, and this is going to be our favorite word, junta. We got a junta, baby.
Oh, God, don't remind me. Oh. So
this new coalition forms together, and it's basically a coalition of these military chiefs, which include Santa Anna. On February 1st, 1823, they proclaim what's called the Plan of Casamata. So the Plan of Casamata, let me pull it up. I got so many tabs going on. I need to get a multiple thing. Casamata. Come on, baby. Oh, come on. Where are you? Oh, wait, there's so much. So they formed this Plan of Casamata, right? And where are you? Damn it, I keep losing my place. So it basically calls pretty subtly for the end of the monarchy. Because I actually did have a scholarly source about the differences between the Plan of Casamata and the Plan of Veracruz, right? Mm-hmm. And the source, I don't have it on me right now. So basically, the Plan of Casamata it's very subtle in its language, to where it doesn't openly call for an end to the monarchy. It kind of mostly calls for like a plan to restore the Congress. But when you read between the lines of the plan, it does essentially call for the end of the monarchy, in addition to restoring the Congress and creating a federal republic. So while all this is happening, Santa Anna is no longer really the main player in the movement, even though he wasn't necessarily the very visible leader. He was a main player prior to the Plan of Casamata. So, in this effort to kind of regain his position in the grand scheme of things, he takes his forces and he marches from the port city of Veracruz to Tampico. And afterwards, he marches them to San Luis Potosi, proclaiming his role as the protector of the Federation. We kind of see him self-aggrandizing here a bit.
Mm.
So these regions, San Luis Potosi, Michoacan, I'm butchering his names. I'm sorry, everybody. Querétaro and Guanajuato they meet together, these regions. They send these folks to meet together and decide where are they going to fit in this new system, in this federation of sorts. So Santa Anna, in an effort to kind of like make himself the main player again, pledges the military forces loyal to him to the protection of all these regions. So he's attempting to essentially like co-opt the movement. Because he's kind of placing himself at the front. He's placing himself as the protector. He's, the guy that he wants everyone to see is like the main force against the imperial government of Iturbide.
Yeah. Okay.
So
it's getting popular movement, I guess.
Yeah. So I think this is a good part to leave off here because we're at a point in his life where we're starting to really see his rise to power. As a caudillo, as a warlord, as a strongman, as a general, as a political player. And I think our next episode, we're going to continue talking more about the life and actions of Santa Anna and how that impacted the history of Mexico and, of course, the future state of Texas.
Okay. We're leading up to that?
Yeah. So...
yeah. Because we're about...
we're a little over 2 hours.
Probably about... no, I mean, in terms of the years until the Mexican Revolution, until the Texas Revolution. We're about...
we're at 1823.
Years. We're about 12... we're about 11, 12 years.
Yeah, so we're getting there. We're getting to the meat and potatoes. So, I've been doing a lot of reading, so I kind of want to give you the last words here. So.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, what a complex web this is. And what I also, too, I see a lot of, I'm looking for a specific word here that's not coming into my mind. I'm seeing a lot of not just back and forth, but also a lot of contradictions. I mean, first of all, this new Mexican empire or this new Mexican government, this newly independent country is doomed to failure because your initial plans to have a constitutional monarchy and then to have Roman Catholicism or any religion as the sole religion or the state religion, and then try to have equality, social and political equality, those don't fit together. I'm sorry, but no, those don't fit together, man. That's like a fashion faux pas, right? That's like trying to mix and match certain colors that just don't color right to your eye. So this is a failure. It's doomed from the start because I see a lot of hypocrisy and it doesn't make sense. That's what I see so far. So that's kind of my impression of it so far.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's so much of this shit.
There's a lot of contradictions happening at once in this new system, right? Because you have a Congress, you have this body that is supposed to be an aspect of representative democracy. And on the other hand, you have a fucking emperor.
Yeah, an emperor, yeah.
Who later dissolves the Congress anyway.
Well, it makes me think in my head, like, pick one. It's like, what the hell? It's like they're trying to be poly-government. You know what I'm saying? Like polyamorous, but poly-governments. That shit don't work in governments. You can pick one. Pick one.
It's very much a problem where it seems like a compromise to where no one is satisfied.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like, because there are liberals who are joining into this whole thing, and some of them don't want a fucking monarchy. Some of them want a republic.
Yeah.
So you give them a little tiny bit of the republic. But then you have these guys who are like, these more conservative dudes who are like, we want a fucking emperor.
Yeah.
We want a monarch.
And they're coming together and like, yeah, let's have this part of the government be that. No, I don't want that way. You can't be half a gangster. It's like Boardwalk Empire, right? You can't be half a gangster. You go.
I guess they're trying to have their cake and eat it too here. And
exactly.
In addition to that, while some of them are trying to form some kind of social equality, political equality, how is political equality possible in an era that's dominated by these warlords? These caudillos. How is that possible when you have warlords who can basically just waltz in with an army and overthrow your state of affairs? You know what I mean?
This is also reminding me of, it's reminding me of how it seems to me, it just seems to me that there's little, what's the word I'm looking for? There's little national pride here, right? I don't think the majority of Mexicans during this time period are seeing themselves all as one entire, nationality or nation.
It's really hard to tell, honestly, at this point.
Because fair.
But also remember from our previous episode too that Mexico still has this social system, even though the plan of Iguala is meant to guarantee social and political equality. You still have a social system that's largely dominated by class and race.
Oh yeah,
that hasn't just disappeared anywhere, you know? Because Iturbide, I don't even think, was he actually Criollo as well? Let me see.
It's like a cake, but the ingredients are all messed up. I don't know how to describe it other than the ingredients are messed up.
Yeah, like Iturbide, it's coming from a family of Basque gentrymen.
Basque as in Spain?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's born in Mexico, or New Spain at this time, but his father, Joaquin de Iturbide, came from a family of Basque gentry who were confirmed in nobility by King Juan II of Aragon. And one of his ancestors, Martin de Iturbide, was designated as Royal Merino, which is it's kind of like a noble title that some conquistadors even had. So he's not coming from nobody. His mother was of pure Spanish origin, born in Mexico, so she was a Criolla. And mind you, during this whole time, Spanish colonial era, racial caste was super important in determining how far you're going to advance in society, including in military rank. So having some indigenous ancestry was actually a disadvantage. But even if you were a Criollo and your family was pure Spanish, you're basically on top of the hierarchy unless like a Peninsulare shows up.
Oh, yeah. Just comes from nowhere. I mean, it does not compute, is what I'm saying in my head.
Yeah.
It does not compute.
It leads to conflict. And this conflict gives a lot of opportunities for Santa Anna to advance his own power. And we're going to talk more about that next week. So we're wrapping it up here, folks.
Oh, yeah. All right. So before we head out, though, I like to say, oh, you bald-headed geeks.
Bald-headed geeks.
Make sure to give us 5 stars. Make sure to go and follow us on Twitter at Ministrymodus, all one word.
Like us
and shoot us in,
leave us a positive review on Yelp.
Yes. Positive reviews. Oh, we'll go come and get you, bald-headed geeks.
Bald-headed geeks.
I'm actually, after this, I'm going to listen to some of those promos I have one pulled up on my YouTube. Pez Watley. funny stuff.
Nice. All right. If you want to get in contact with us, follow us at Ministrymodus on Twitter, all one word, or you could email us at martinandcornbread@gmail.com, all one word. All right, beautifuls. Thank you for joining us this week. Gonna start part 2 next week.
Part 3.
Oh, yeah, part 3. Excuse me.
You're tripping too. You must be confused.
I'm tripping. I am tripping.
You bald-headed geek.
I am actually
Oh, shoot. I keep saying that. I got that VD verbal diarrhea, yo. I'm sorry.
Verbal diarrhea today.
VD, man.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You have a good one.